This message comes from NPR sponsor Hulu. From the executive producers of The Handmaid's Tale comes The Testaments, a new Hulu original series based on the novel by Margaret Atwood. Premiering April 8th on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
I was interviewing current undergraduate students, and I asked them about how they identified themselves racially. And one student, they said, I am a citizen of Wasia. And I had never heard that. And I was like, tell me more, tell me more.
I don't know about you, but when Alysa Liu was doing her thing on that Olympic ice to MacArthur Park by Donna Summer, I couldn't escape the videos. I didn't want to escape the videos. And I still see her performance to Stateside by Pink Pantheress and Zara Larsson go viral.
She is such a phenomenon. Or, as Chapel Roan puts it, a femininomenon.
You're absolutely right. Mika Ellison, welcome to It's Been a Minute.
Hi, Brittany.
So Mika is actually an It's Been a Minute and Life Kit intern. Mika, are you an Alysa Liu stan too?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. I feel like she's really ushering in this new, more joyful era in figure skating. And she's also just kind of the people's princess,
100%.
But one thing about her sudden establishment as this household name that was really interesting to me was that after she won the gold medal, I kept seeing all this discourse about her that didn't really have anything to do with her skating.
I am so happy that Gen Z has such great Wasian representation, with Alysa Liu being the prime example from the Olympics.
Everybody knows this is a year of abundance for Wasians. We're already seeing it with Alysa Liu and Eileen Gu at the Olympics.
I kept seeing all these posts that are it's Wasian winter or it's the Wasian century. And that feels like a continuation of something I've been picking up on social media for a while. This Wasian wave or Wasian fixation.
Wasian fixation. Tell me about that. Can you explain what it is for people who don't know?
Okay, yes. So for those who haven't heard, Wasians are people who are mixed white and Asian. And not everyone loves or uses that term. Some people say mixed Asian or part Asian, but I identify as Wasian.
Okay, so what about the fixation part?
So, Alysa Liu is not the first person I've seen to be part of this narrative of Wasian excellence. I feel like I've seen these TikTok videos that have this royal tree of Wasia, it's a real place.
Okay, guys, there's a lot of misunderstanding about who the royal family of Wasia is, so let me break it down for you. So first off, we have the king. The king is obviously Keanu Reeves. He's legend, been here forever.
There's a whole hierarchy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's kind of a meme. And I feel like I can say this. Wasians are kind of hot right now.
2026 is going to be the year of Wasians. I can just feel it. First of all, every time I go out in public, people are asking me if I'm Wasian. That never used to happen. Why do I feel like a celebrity now just because I'm Wasian?
Some of our biggest stars right now are Wasian. Alysa Liu, of course, who skated to a song by Leve, who is Icelandic and Chinese. And obviously Hudson Williams, star of Heated Rivalry. He's Korean and white. And that show, by the way, had over 10 million viewers, which is a lot. That's nearing network TV numbers for a shoestring budget streaming show about gay hockey players.
That is so wild.
Or in music, Olivia Rodrigo is our Filipino Wasian princess and has the most streamed album by a female artist on Spotify.
It's because of me. Sorry. It's because of me. It's because of me.
And beyond them, Wasians are kind of everywhere in pop culture. TV shows like The Summer I Turned Pretty, Industry, The Pit, musicians Mitski and Michelle Zauner, the lead singer of Japanese Breakfast, are both also Wasian. And it's not just that there are a lot of Wasians coming up in the culture right now, usually Wasian kids born in the 1990s and 2000s, they're kind of coming of age. What's really interesting to me is this social discourse and all the memes about it. I think it really says something about how attitudes around certain multiracial identities have changed. And part of this is really celebratory. Wasians are talking about Wasians, finding community in the shared identity. But I've also seen some non-Wasians talking about us in kind of a jokey way, or sometimes a fetishizing way. And it's a little weird that a certain racial mix has become the topic of conversation. It's this whole pop culture moment around Wasians.
Yeah, I would agree.
And as someone who's Wasian myself, I wanted to go deep on why this is happening now. I grew up in Southern California, which is like Wasian Central, so no one really cared that I was Wasian growing up. Like, there were tons of Wasians in my school, I had Wasian adults in my life, so I wanted to know why people are suddenly talking about it.
I know you've looked into this. I am really interested to know more.
Let's do it.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. And a reminder, if you love It's Been a Minute, which from the sweet comments y'all have been leaving, it sounds like maybe you do, be sure to follow or subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. That way you get new episodes the moment they drop. It's not like there haven't been people who are white and Asian before, so why Wasians right now?
Okay, yes, we'll get to that in a second. But first I want to put forth a theory. I think there are different waves of Wasians in U.S. history, and the one we're in right now is the most culturally powerful, let's say, of all of them.
Okay, tell me more.
There's a book, Chinatown Trunk Mysteries, that looked into census data from New York at turn of the century, where they noticed that there's actually more intermarriage between Asian men and white women than there were between Asian men and Asian women, partly because there were laws against Asian women immigrating.
That's Leilani Nishime, a professor of communication at the University of Washington. She studies multiracial Asians.
And so there were large numbers of mixed-race Asian kids, but then we don't see them after that, right? They don't show up in the census later on. And the same was happening in California.
Wait, why weren't they showing up in the census?
Their parents basically just had to choose which race box, white or Asian, to check whenever they filled out forms, because you weren't allowed to check both.
Ah, I see.
So those were like the earlier waves. And then there was another one during the mid-century, mainly because of our wars in Asia.
You know, coming out of Vietnam War and the Korean War, I think a lot of mixed-race Asians were assumed to be the children of servicemen who were involved with women from Asia.
And I actually heard this assumption from Alexander Chee, author and professor at Dartmouth. He grew up in New England during the 70s.
Growing up, the assumption was always that my dad was white and my mom was Asian. People would ask me about my heritage, and I was always correcting them, and they were always so confused.
Yeah.
There is a kind of cultural script underneath that that's related to our military history that underscores all of this.
So there's a pretty obvious piece of legal history that was important for Wasians around this time. It's, of course, Loving versus Virginia, the 1967 Supreme Court case that struck down Virginia's Racial Integrity Act and legalized interracial marriage. But the other piece that's maybe less well-known is the Hart-Celler Act of 1965. So that act abolished previous quotas against immigrants from specific countries, which were discriminatory against Asians for a really long time. And then the act also preferenced professionals with specialized skills. So that act opened the door, and then some Asian countries started to get rich. Leilani again.
You see the rise of Asia as an economic force. First Japan, and then Hong Kong, and then China.
Korea too.
Right, and richer nations tend to produce more highly skilled professionals.
Exactly. And not every Asian immigrant was one, but between 1980 and 2010, the Asian and Pacific Islander population in America increased fourfold, according to Pew. And Leilani thinks the increased status of Asian countries and Asian immigrants also changed how we see Wasians.
I think the image of mixed-race Asians tended to follow that trajectory, and so they became much more associated with cosmopolitanism, with people who had the ability to move freely across the planet, people who were privileged. And I'm not saying that mixed-race Asians, like before, they weren't all kids of soldiers, and now they're not all kids of rich, entrepreneurs, but that's the public image. So it's a much more kind of flattering, maybe, public image or positive public image.
And this is why I think Wasians that are coming of age right now maybe have more cultural power than they've had in the past. Asians as a whole are the most educated racial group in America. And also according to that same Pew survey from 2012, Asians were more likely than any other racial group to marry someone of a different race. Not all of us, but many of us Wasians have had parents who came with, married into, or fought to attain money, education, opportunities. Maybe so they could pay for our acting classes or skating lessons. And that changing perception of Asians in America, plus the Wasian proximity to whiteness, probably explains at least part of why now.
Wow, you give me a lot to think about with that. I mean, it's really interesting. It's not just a product of like a constellation of young celebrities, but like a whole geopolitical story. Hold on, though. I feel like the adoption of Wasian as a term, though, like I feel like that's kind of new.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was growing up, there was a different term that I saw around or heard around, which is Hapa. Did you ever use that?
Yes, I was definitely in the tail end of what we'll call the Hapa generation. For people who don't know, Hapa is taken from this Hawaiian phrase, Hapa haole, which means half white. So depending on the context, it can really refer to anyone who's half white, but Hapa ended up being used to refer to mixed Asian people in general, regardless of percentages. And it was definitely super popular to use that term to refer to mixed Asian people in the past 30 years or so. I learned more about it from Rebecca King-Orian. She's now a sociology professor who studies the intersection of Wasians, social media, and pop culture. But back in the 90s, she was part of this student group in Berkeley called the Hapa Issues Forum.
We were young. It was the 90s. Like we were trying to carve a space because I think a lot of us had gone to like a lot of the Asian American student groups, but we often were sort of looked at strange or in some cases even rejected from kind of Asian clubs because we weren't Asian enough. I met all these other mixed race people and particularly mixed Asian people and lots of people with my mix, and founding Hapa Issues Forum was really, really kind of empowering, and we had great success.
But then people started to be like, wait, isn't referring to mixed Asian people using an indigenous Hawaiian term maybe cultural appropriation? And the general consensus was kind of, yeah.
We were accused of appropriating, and probably it's true. We did appropriate the word Hapa. Part of the reason I think that word appealed to us in the early 90s was it wasn't, so like fractionalizing yourself in terms of, I'm half this or half that, a quarter that.
Even though a lot of people like Rebecca and myself liked and used the term, it did fall out of favor a little bit.
Interesting. So about when did you stop using it?
I would say middle school, early high school. And then after that, we just kind of didn't have any other labels. So when Wasian came along, it was very exciting. Here's Rebecca again.
When I talk to people about the hashtag Wasian thing, they actually love the trend. They love the hashtag because it allowed them to see other people like themselves.
Did you ever feel that way?
Well, as I mentioned, my whole life I've kind of been surrounded by Wasians, so it's not exactly new to me. And I will admit that having a label is kind of nice. But the thing that feels new is seeing more Wasian stories.
We are going to take a quick break. But first, if any of you are finding It's Been a Minute for the first time, welcome. I hope you're enjoying this show and that you come back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning for brand new episodes. And every Tuesday, a video episode. Yesterday's was on the fact versus fiction of being a kept woman. And trust me, it's the exact kind of girl math a lot of people need. You can find that video on Spotify or YouTube, or just listen to the audio wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up after the break.
It's sort of representation without kind of like a deeper potential impact on folks. I mean, I think the implicit message is that like we can see race exists, but we don't talk about it.
Stick around.
This message comes from Betterment. You know when you sell a stock or any investing asset and start to feel the dread of getting a surprise tax bill? Betterment's Tax Impact Preview tool shows you the estimated tax impact of the sale, so you can make informed, tax-smart investing decisions. Get started today at Betterment.com. Investing involves risk, performance not guaranteed. Betterment is not a tax advisor, nor should any information herein be considered tax advice. Please consult a qualified tax professional.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Carvana, making buying a car 100% online with real, transparent pricing and customizable financing that fits your budget. Browse thousands of cars and get yours delivered. Visit Carvana.com today. Delivery fees and terms may apply. This message comes from Grainger. This is the story of the one. As a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility, he knows keeping the line up and running is a top priority. That's why he chooses Grainger. Because when a drive belt gets damaged, Grainger makes it easy to find the exact specs for the replacement product he needs. And next-day delivery helps ensure he'll have everything in place and running like clockwork. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
These days, it feels like the news changes every hour. Well, NPR has a podcast that does that too. NPR News Now brings you a fresh 5-minute episode every hour of the day with the latest, most important headlines in episodes that are clear, fact-based, and easy to digest. Listen to NPR News Now on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts.
So Wasians have been around for a long time. We're not new, but we've been kind of incognito.
There was actually a website that listed all the Asians that you didn't know were Asian. And people would always try to add to the list. And then there was people that you weren't sure about, but they were making the list anyways.
That's Leilani again. In her research, she found mixed Asians have often just kind of assimilated into whatever category people decide they look more like.
So one of the examples I used was Keanu Reeves, probably the most famous one. And I talk about how early on in his career, in the roles he was playing, he usually had white parents.
But what feels newer to me is that we have characters and stories now about people who are specifically Wasian. Like all of the sisters in the Netflix movie To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and the spin-off show XO Kitty, or Hudson Williams in Heated Rivalry.
Oh, yes, I've seen all of these things. Check, check, check.
Heated Rivalry specifically, huge for Wasians. I really think I started seeing all of this stuff, all the memes about us, when the show came out. And I can't say for sure which, but Hudson Williams playing Shane Hollander either precipitated or accelerated this focus on Wasia.
I remember there's some photos in the show that are I think him as a kid, and he looks in the photos exactly like my brother. I had a moment of wow, that's Chris.
That's Alexander Chi again.
I think the sense I got of him was of him projecting that sense of being mixed in an environment that's predominantly white, knowing no one's going to care around you to get the difference right. And so instead, you're just trying to quote unquote, do your best, you know, which is one of those ambiguous benchmarks. When you're dealing with a racist and misogynistic and homophobic status quo, which is, I think, part of what the show is about.
Oh, it's really interesting to hear that from his perspective. I was definitely picking up on the significance of Shane Hollander being Wasian in it, but hearing that personal dimension, it just adds a new layer to a show that I already really liked.
Yeah, for me, it was one of the only times that I've seen a show care that a character was Wasian. Though his story did fall a little bit into that stereotype that Leilani was describing earlier about this privileged, rich Wasian. But anyway, even though I personally have enjoyed the Wasian label, seeing all the Wasians come up in culture, I think there are some people who still see casting Wasians as kind of a cynical ploy.
In terms of streaming, it's you're trying to capture every piece of the pie.
That's Samantha Texon, a PhD student at USC who studies streaming platforms and representation.
You don't want to buck the white audience. So that's why those corporations are kind of going after. It's you're the safest body to have. You are indeed just Asian enough to be properly diverse, but also not properly diverse all at once.
And that kind of bears out in the data. According to the UCLA Hollywood Diversity Report for 2025, 22% of leads in streaming films were multiracial. That's the second largest share behind white people. And that includes other types of multiracial people, of course. But the share of non-mixed Asian leads was 2%, which is obviously way, way lower.
I mean, 2%? That is low. It's kind of crummy to think that, for Asian Americans, in order for them to be seen, they have to have some white heritage. But that also, I will say, that feels like a problem for Black entertainment as well.
Right. And also at the same time, I think a little Asianness is kind of palatable for white people, actually. K-pop is huge. Squid Game was huge. Anime is huge. Even on the culinary level, and this is my own opinion, but I feel like Americans are not as afraid of Asian foods and ingredients. And they're even kind of trendy.
Yes, there was that whole TikTok drama about whether there are too many white people shopping in H Mart nowadays. And then, Black people, we were in the comments okay, well, can we shop at H Mart? What's going on?
I think that discourse was embarrassing for everyone. But anyway, going back to Wasians on screen, I feel like on one end of the spectrum, you have a character like Shane Hollander, who's shaped somewhat by being Wasian. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Wasians on screen that are just kind of there. Here's Jacob Campbell, a graduate student at The Ohio State University, who studies higher education and representation.
It's sort of representation without kind of like a deeper potential impact on folks. I mean, I think the implicit message is that like we can see race exists, but we don't talk about it, or it's not something that we need to like spend narrative time on in this, TV show or whatever it may be.
And you might say, okay, why does it matter? We have Wasian people on screen, and it's great. Does every story need to be about being Wasian? And like the thing that happens when you don't acknowledge Wasianness is that more often than not, these stories end up treating Wasian people exactly like white people, with all of the attendant privileges, like in The Summer I Turned Pretty.
Okay, I am very familiar with Miss Belly Conklin, lead character of The Summer I Turned Pretty. But how do you think the story treats her like a white character?
Yeah, so Belly's obviously Wasian. We see both of her parents enough that it's pretty obvious. But the whole story is this kind of her being in this wealthy country club environment where most of the other characters are white and wealthy, including both of the love interests. And that kind of stereotype of that privileged Wasian just goes unspoken here. The fact that she's mixed Asian just doesn't really come up, even though, like, for me, it totally would. I think there's this idea that if Wasian people look white enough, or if we fit in well enough, we'll eventually just assimilate into whiteness. It's this kind of model minority idea that's often attached to non-mixed Asian people too, that if we're well-behaved and white-acting enough, Asian people can just, like, assimilate. But that's not actually how things work. Sometimes Wasians get those privileges attached to whiteness, and sometimes we don't.
It's interesting to hear about this because, like, most of the mixed discourse I've been privy to has been about, mixed people of Black and white heritage. There was a whole Fixation in the 90s. Mariah Carey alone, had people doing all sorts of thought exercises about race. But one of the things you're saying here is this idea that Wasian people can kind of have it both ways. That doesn't really exist for mixed people of Black and white heritage, like even for people like Mariah Carey, right? Even the knowledge of her Black ancestry, it changed how people and the industry viewed her. Of course, that has to do with the one-drop rule. It's the legal history in the U.S. that ruled that if you had even a little Black ancestry, aka one drop, no matter how far back it was or how you look, you are Black. There was no moving in between unless you completely hid your ancestry. And a lot of mixed people of Black and white ancestry identified primarily as Black, thinking of like Barack Obama or Halle Berry. Like they might have a white parent, but they're Black. That might have changed recently. I think there are a few more descriptors that people might use now. But that idea of assimilation or moving back and forth between is not often as accessible for people of Black ancestry.
Exactly. And that's another thing the Wasian fixation misses. There are a lot of mixed Asian Americans who aren't white at all, and they tend to have very different experiences with representation. A lot of times, their Asianness is still invisible, and they really can't have it both ways because people just sort them into the other category. Myra Washington is an associate professor at the University of Utah. She's Black and Korean, and she says in her experience,
even standing next to my Korean mother, people will be like, no, I don't. Oh, okay, maybe I can in the eyes, maybe I see the Asianness, right? But then, they get confused and they're like, but if an Asian can look like her, then that means what I know of Asianness needs to expand because it defaults to what can we recognize you as, and it's almost always Black.
I know there are Blasian or Latino Asian actors and athletes and stories. I have a young person in my life who is Blasian, meaning Black and Asian. And I am always on the lookout for Blasian people out in the world for her to look up to. But I'm not seeing the same kind of wider interest in like Blasian identity.
Nope.
Even like Kamala Harris, right? She ran for president. And I wasn't seeing people en masse being like, Blasians rise up. And I think that's because she was seen more as Black. But also, Americans more broadly tend to think of Asians as just East and Southeast Asian people like Korean, Japanese, Filipino, and not South Asian like Indian, Bangladeshi, etc.
Totally.
There have been a few waves of Malaysian celebrities and visibility, but then we just forget.
And also, some of the older white and Asian mixed folks I talk to, let's say from the Hapa generation, don't actually like the term Wasian.
I feel like Anna Wintour when she told her staff to find another word for blog.
That's Alexander Chi again. I had a longer conversation with him about this word because he had a lot of thoughts about why it's maybe not actually so great.
It's funny. I was just looking over a Reddit conversation where somebody was like talking about why they felt the word offended them. And it was very similar to my own reaction, which is just like being irritated that the W, which represents whiteness, is the first part.
I've talked to a couple other people, and some people sort of have the same concerns as you of like, it sort of centers whiteness in a way that a lot of people find kind of annoying or like, I guess, aggressive. But other people are kind of saying like, I talked to one expert who said she actually likes it because it's kind of acknowledging the whiteness in a way that might be good instead of like just sort of saying like mixed Asian. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, I don't think it's good exactly. I do get the idea of like having something better than mixed Asian, certainly, as someone who has repeatedly referred to himself that way, you know, just because it's a kind of pragmatic, bureaucratic expression. And really, bureaucracies, I suppose, are where these expressions have so often mattered.
That's a really interesting perspective on this. Very interesting.
Yeah. And like, even though he's not a fan of the word, he did seem kind of resigned to it.
And at a certain point, I suppose one has to give in to the widespread adoption of it.
Yeah.
Like until there's something else that's new that replaces it, I suppose for convenience, it can be used. It kind of has a certain comedy to it, right?
Yeah.
Like the word is a little ridiculous. In some ways, like the easiest way to kill the word off would be to adopt it so that it becomes so widespread that people are like, we need a new word.
Yeah. I think where I come down on it is I do actually like it. I think it names a lot of the uncomfortability I had as like a kid growing up because we would try to talk about mixed Asians, like you were saying, but that was so broad, like it's so depending on what you're mixed with, depending on your history, like I feel like it started to get so difficult to talk about what mixed Asian was. And so I do think Wasian, I have the same concerns you do a little bit about, I think the whiteness eclipsing all of it, but I think it's good to have such a specific term to name a specific thing. I think for me, I don't know.
In many ways, I think it's better to use it and pay attention to how you feel.
It's so interesting to hear the two of you disagree. Like, I have no dog in this fight, but I can see where each of you is coming from. But that's exactly what's so thorny about trying to find simple language to explain something as complicated and individual as identity.
Yeah. And on the one hand, everything he said, I was like, yes, you are correct. The W is speaking first. But I still kind of like the term, even though I never want to paper over these issues or potential issues with the word. I don't know. I feel like Alexander said, we can just notice when we use the word and talk about how it makes us feel. And it does feel a little bit like, wow, it is the Wasians' turn in the spotlight, and that is so fun. But at the same time, I do want there to be like context and actual depth to how our identities are shown. And I don't want to hog the spotlight. Plus, the thing about crazes is that they come and go. I think the solution, if there is one, is that this Wasian craze should kind of open us up to like the fullness of our experience, beyond just this fun, but maybe fleeting, moment of recognition.
Thank you so much. You have shed so much light on the Wasian craze today. I mean, maybe if you keep going like this, you can make it to the royal family tree, the Republic of Wasia.
I know, I'm so excited. Maybe I'll be the official Wasian correspondent.
Oh, only time will tell. Only time will tell. Well, Mika, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad you came on the show. That was Mika Ellison, intern for NPR's It's Been a Minute and Life Kit. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Liam McBain.
This episode was edited by
Nina Patak.
Engineering support came from
Jimmy Keeley.
Our supervising producer is
Barton Girdwood.
Our VP of Programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
And a very special thanks to NPR's Emily Kwong for her support in making this episode. All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
This message comes from Angie. Tackling a home project, Angie can connect you with pros who do such a good job you might ask them to be your kid's godfather. Don't do that. Just trust them to get the job done. Find a pro for your projects at Angie.com. That's ANGI.com.